Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Memphis Police Director Mike Rawlings, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Mike Rawlings, Memphis Police Director. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. We'll talk about all kinds of things that are going on in your world, but we'll start with a couple things that are probably top of mind for a lot of people, one of which is the kind of flood of police, state troopers as well, but we'll just talk about the police on the interstates. And I mean, I think the other day I was driving back from the studio to downtown. I think I saw 5 Memphis police cars. 3 of them had people pulled over. Driving into the studio today, I think I saw 3 or 4 with 2 or 3 of them pulled over. Mm-hmm. What is that about, and what is the point, and how long will it last?
Well, I'm not sure how long it's going to last. And actually, some of it has been going on for a number of years. We definitely were concerned about the number of road rage incidents and shootings on the interstate, but we've always been concerned about the number of fatalities and crashes that happen on the interstate. And so the officers out there to help our citizens demonstrate kind and considerate behavior when some are not able to do it on their own. It's interesting you brought up the interstate. Myself and a sheriff's deputy pulled over a young man yesterday on the way to work. His excuse was he was late for work, and I said, well, did you help your situation out any? Driving very aggressively, thinking that he created an unsafe condition, but we just want people to be able to travel to and fro work and from visiting and traveling through the city safely.
And let's break down road rage and the incidents that have happened with guns. Are these mostly, I mean, when I hear road rage, I think of somebody who just gets so mad because they got cut off or someone's in their way and they pull a gun out and they either wave it or they shoot it at a car. I mean, is that when you say road rage, what do you mean?
Well, I think you did a good job of shaping what I think road rage is. But when, aggressive driving, it may not be to the level of road rage, but it does create an unsafe condition. Road rage for me is when, someone is driving and, from the incidents that we've had, get cut off or, someone won't move over and people get upset. And unfortunately, with the state legislature extending the home to the car and allowing people without a permit to carry a gun, they've made the access to a firearm very easy. And it appears that a lot of individuals choose to pull a gun or shoot a gun when they should, just be driving on.
I'll go to Bill after this question. Just to break, when your folks have pulled people over or have arrested people for a road rage with a gun where they've shot, what is their explanation? I mean, are they shooting at, I know this seems strange maybe, but I really am so curious about the mentality of this. Are they shooting at the driver? Are they trying to shoot a tire? Are they just shooting in the air to sort of scare someone? Or is it any of those?
Yeah, we've seen probably all of the above.
Okay.
Mostly it appears that they're shooting at the car. But, when you fire a gun in the city limits, especially on the interstate, you don't know where that bullet's going to land. That's reckless. It's an aggravated assault. And we're going to continue to work with the state legislature to increase the penalties for road rage, shooting at someone from a vehicle, and I applaud Mayor Strickland for trying to work with the legislature. I'll continue to work with the legislation. I hope that the other state representatives try to do something about it because it is a problem, but it is a problem that they created.
Yeah. Bill.
And the state law on this, to be clear, if someone gets upset while they're out there on the road for whatever reason and they pull out their gun and they fire a shot at another car and they miss, the state law doesn't treat that as seriously as it does if they hit someone?
So,
am I right on that? Or?
Well, what you described sounds like it would probably be a reckless endangerment, but it could be an aggravated assault. The issue, though, is that we think that the penalty should be increased. There should be some mandatory jail time, stiffer penalties, and also we definitely want the state to hire more Tennessee Highway Patrol troopers to patrol Memphis. You know, we're the largest county in the state. You know, you're talking about 73 million people estimated a year traveling through our highways and byways. And I think that with us generating so much revenue, most populous county, that we deserve the level of service that our citizens need to keep safe.
So just the presence of the police officers there on the interstate, is that having an effect? Are people calming down?
Oh,
so to speak?
without a doubt. There's not a day that goes by where someone is not thanking me for the presence of the officers on the interstate. You may have heard that recently an officer made a stop and we ran into a homicide suspect. But we're recovering guns and drugs, wanted individuals. But the biggest issue is safety. You know, we have 33,000 crashes every single year in Memphis. You know, hundreds of fatalities. It is our responsibility to help keep people safe. And when folks do not want to follow the rules on their own, you know, the police are there to help them out.
Let's shift to, we'll talk some more about the legislature down the road here, but let's switch to the protests in Fraser a month ago now. And I'll fumble through this. To clarify, the warrant that was issued was, it was about an incident, an accusation in DeSoto County, and then the folks who were there were U.S. Marshals. So your folks didn't get involved until protests broke out, and there were quite a few Memphis police officers up there. Do you look back on that very hot, very difficult, very painful situation, I mean, I think on all levels, and think that maybe you guys go through a kind of debrief afterward and say, hey, what could we have done differently? Could we have done better? And what was the outcome if you do that sort of reflection?
So we review every single critical incident. But if we go back to Fraser, you know, we were not involved in the shooting. We were called to the scene after the shooting. Our job is to protect the crime scene and hold the scene for TBI. But there was a thought that there was an individual barricaded inside the home, so it made it very complicated. The officers performed just remarkably well. They demonstrated incredible restraint. You know, we have some of the bravest men and women in the nation. And when you reflect on these incidents, you always can do a better job. We spent time going to meet our officers in roll call. I spent time with our officers in training so we could hear their thoughts on it. And we immediately, met with our commanders and start talking about what could we have done better. But again, that's something we do every critical incident. Unfortunately, you know, we have not seen that level of violence on an incident. So we have made better preparations to protect our officers and respond to that type of situation. But one thing that I do want to impress upon everyone, we will not tolerate violence against police officers.
So when you said that level of violence, you meant the rock throwing and the violence
yes.
Post the shooting of Brandon Weber, the violence directed at the police who were there.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't realize that the officers were out there for 2 hours before the rock throwing began. And when the rock throwing incident was really relatively a short period of time before our commanders thought that there was a need to deploy a chemical agent. Once the chemical
what we think of as
tear gas. Once the chemical agent was deployed, the situation was resolved. So again, when we talk about a lot of times people base everything on outcomes. Well, there's more into it than just outcomes. But if you just look at the outcome, the officers responded to an investigation that was going to be conducted by TBI. They maintained their level of professionalism and restraint. We responded to unprovoked violence by the crowd, and we resolved it with less lethal chemical munitions. And I cannot continue to or overlook the bravery that our men and women demonstrated, and we should all be very proud of them.
Let me bring Bill in.
Director, did you know in advance that this federal task force was going to be here serving a warrant? Did they check in with you before?
No, sir, and they don't have to check in with us. So you got to think about it. At any given day, there are probably 10,000, it's really over, I think it's 20,000 wanted parties in Shelby County. And we have all types of federal, state, and local law enforcement working to go and find those wanted individuals. And I think that they're fully capable of doing their job. They're the individuals we call when someone has crossed state lines or they go after the worst of the worst. And, you know, we try to communicate on a regular basis. Obviously, there are incidents where we're going to want to know, but they're going about their daily works just like us. And we're working behind the scenes to improve our level of communications. But we know that we're not going to know every single thing, every single person they go after. We're busy. We're trying to keep up with our own work, but we'll continue to work with our federal partners to communicate, to execute safe operations. But again, it's really about our citizens wanting a safer environment. And when there's wanted individuals that you know about, you should call the police and let us know, because that's our job, to keep our community safe and work with law enforcement to help you.
Is it? This has been described as a task force that works out of the Gulf Coast or in that area.
Yes.
Is it unusual for a group like that to come in here, and how much did they know about the area that they were going into?
Yeah, I think you should talk to the U.S. Marshals about that. It's very usual for them to be operating. I'll guarantee you they're out looking for a fugitive right now, and probably within the limits of Shelby County. And again, we depend on them. And we have homicide suspects that we think have fled the area. We contact them. When we're concerned about very violent individuals that we're looking for that have warrants, we contact them. So again, the U.S. Marshals is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, law enforcement service in the United States. It's a professional organization, and we'll continue to work with them to bring individuals to justice. Unfortunately, this situation resulted in a shooting. But if you think about all the warrants they serve, all the violent individuals they go after, they rarely have a shooting incident. And so we should look at their body of work. We should look at the body of work of law enforcement and realize that it definitely is an unfortunate situation, but sometimes law enforcement is going to have to use deadly force. I encourage any individual that comes in contact with law enforcement, just comply. If you comply, there most likely will not be an escalation of this incident. Everybody gets to go home, except for the wanted party individual that probably will be going to jail. But it's a lot, easier for everyone if we comply with law enforcement. If I ever come in contact with the U.S. Marshals, I am going to comply.
We'll switch. You mentioned the homicide rate, and that, a lot of attention for, I think, the average citizen, certainly the media, on the murder rate. And I'm going to use those interchangeably, and I know I shouldn't, so I apologize in advance, and you can help clarify the difference between how you all look at a murder versus a homicide. What can your office do to bring that murder rate down?
So, we're going to continue to, when you think about, first let me clarify the difference.
Yeah, please.
Murder and homicide. A murder is an unlawful killing of an individual. And a homicide, like a justifiable homicide, could be a lawful killing where someone uses self-defense or defense of a third party. As a community, we have a responsibility to do something about homicides. We realize that law enforcement, you're often graded on your homicides or your murders and your ability to reduce or maintain those. So today, we're sitting at 101 murders compared to 93 last year. We're 9% above last year. But there's a lot we can do. The issue of access to guns is a problem that the state legislature appears to be very reluctant or totally unwilling to do something about it. We have to, think about the mayor's priorities of hiring more police officers. When we had 2,500 police officers, we saw some of the lowest homicide rates that we've seen in my entire career.
Where are you now? Just to interrupt for one second, you all are at about 2,200, is that right? Or
so our goal this year is to end with 2,200 this fiscal year. So today we're at 2,068. We have around 80, 85 police recruits. We have a police service technician graduation on Friday that'll take us up to 125 PSTs. So we're doing good.
PSTs
but we have
are the folks people see maybe in the white cards, maybe at a minor wreck at an intersection or something like that. Okay.
The khaki uniforms.
Yeah. And the low point, I'm sorry, just so people don't follow this stuff so closely, the low point was what, 1,900 in terms of uniformed officers?
Yeah, so, shortly after, the mayor took office, we had around 1,900 police officers, which is grossly inadequate to do the job. I mean, I think we had 1.7 million calls, 911 calls came into our 911 call center last year, and we need enough officers to handle the call load. Well, let's get back to homicides and murders. You asked a very great question. So yesterday I was meeting with a group, and I often meet with clergy, and so we can do a lot. And so in 2016, we asked the University of Memphis to study our homicides. They came in and studied, and they found there were 3 major factors that just stood out that were statistically significant, where, what would predict, or what could you look at to predict if someone would be a homicide suspect or a homicide victim? 3 very simple things. One was exposure to domestic violence. And we have 10,000 incidents of intimate partner violence in Memphis every single year. We can do something about domestic violence.
Because that escalates into a killing, and the exposure to that level of violence. And there's a
there are
connection.
some domestic violence related murders, but children are learning to be violent at home. The other issue was high school dropout. We can wrap around, young people in school, because the young men I visit in jail and in juvenile court, a lot of them cannot read and write. If you cannot read and write, you're going to have a lot of problems trying to get a job when there are 13,000 open jobs in Memphis. If you're illiterate, then you're almost unemployable. And so we have to really focus on that. I applaud Dr. Ray for standing up and saying that, we have a problem in Shelby County Schools, Superintendent George Ray, and that we have to do a better job. We have to wrap around our young men, make sure they're educated, make sure they're ready to enter the workforce, or it's going to be very tough. The third issue was transient. We have a transient population in a lot of areas of town that move from place to place. They're changing schools. It brings about a lot of uncertainty. So the issue of homelessness.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The issue of homelessness and poverty, hunger, these issues have to be addressed. But guess what? Let me finish. That these are not law enforcement issues.
Well, that's about what I was about to say. So there is those are societal issues, those are systemic issues, and those are long-term issues, right?
Yes.
I mean, and so is it maddening to you? I mean, people will look at you and say, yeah, but what did you do to prevent that killing?
Oh, that's fine. So what I want to ensure that we as a department, we're doing our job. We increased our homicide unit. We created a violence crime unit. We added to our multi-agency gang unit. We're standing up a crime gun intelligence center. We're working with, we're in our 2nd year of the public safety partnership with the DOJ, where our federal, state, and local partners are working together to reduce crime. So let's talk about where we're at today, because this does not get out much. So I was looking at the daily crime today. We're down almost 6% today compared to last year. When I look at violent crime is down 7%. Major property crime is down significantly, over 6%. So if you look at the report card, where we're hiring more police officers, we are working with our units behind the scenes to make sure that they're efficient, working with the Department of Justice, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DA's office, and we are reducing crime when we have inadequate staff to do our job. Our men and women are doing some amazing work, and I just need the rest of the community to do your part.
Yeah.
It is not our responsibility to raise your children. It is not our responsibility to make sure they go to school and learn. We as a community, but we're here to partner with you to help and make sure that happens.
All right, 5 minutes left. Bill.
Do you think that the count of murders or the trend with murders follows aggravated assaults, or is it the other way around? Do the so-called lesser offenses follow what you're able to do with the murder count?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you look at our murders, when we look at the percent of solved murders where the majority of the individuals know each other. I was looking at the news where some individuals that knew each other got into an argument that ended in gunfire. We have a violence problem, and so some of this is a morality issue. Individuals that know each other are choosing to pick up guns instead of trying to resolve their issues. So making sure that we teach individuals conflict resolution is critical. When you talk about the aggravated assaults, when access to guns is a problem, and again, the state legislature has to do their part because 1,273 guns were stolen from cars in Memphis. When they extended the house to the car, there are more access to guns. Individuals are more prone to violence because of the access. So the state legislature needs to do their part. We want responsible gun ownership. But I think that, the state legislature chose to restrict what you do with your cell phone versus how you store your gun. That does not make sense to me. When we have a violence problem, we all have a responsibility. But aggravated assaults are down, robberies are down, carjackings are down. Murders are still a challenge, and I'm going to ask that our community step up, partner with the police department, partner with our other nonprofit agencies to help us keep kids in school. Tell the police when you see acts of violence or criminal activity, and work with us to make this community safe.
You talked about killings that involve the majority involve people who know each other.
Yes.
When a random, truly random murder happens, and I think most recently of Glenn Cofield, who was killed on East Parkway coming out of a fundraiser, and he was a big community figure.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to, these are awkward conversations where all lives matter, okay? But there was certainly a portion of the community that responded to that. There was an outpouring of anger and fear and sadness because of his connections across the community and work he had done. Do you, as the police department, feel that, or do you look at every, killing as equal? Do you see what I'm trying to get at? I mean, does that prominence of an individual, the connections of an individual, and I'm not talking wealth, I'm not trying to get into that. Does that influence how you approach something? And the randomness, does that influence how you approach it?
That's a great question, and that's one question that we get all the time. There's a misconception that we treat one murder differently than the other.
Right.
There's a series of senseless murders. And you said it best, all lives matter. And I remember Director Armstrong saying that after the death of Officer Sean Bolton, and he got some criticism because that was a police officer.
Right.
But all lives do matter. And so we take every single homicide seriously. Obviously, when it's in the news, you hear about it more. There are some that just stand out in my mind. The murder of Layla Washington, a precious baby murdered. The murder of Manisha Johnson, a young mother, the mother of a 1-year-old that could not graduate from BTW. Little Richard Jordan that was murdered while driving down the street. And obviously the murder of Glenn Cofield is something that we are going to work to very hard. We're working on it right now to solve. But here's something that we can do about it, because somebody knows who murdered all those individuals I just mentioned. It took us over a year for someone to come forward and give us the break we needed to solve the murder of Layla Washington. I am confident that someone's going to come forward, or we're going to find the evidence that we need to charge someone for the murder of Mr. Richard Jordan, Glenn Cofield, and thankfully, Monisha Johnson's murderer, Quasi Corbin, was convicted, and he will be held accountable for the deeds that he did. But we need people, if they see something, they need to say something. Call Crime Stoppers, call the Memphis Police Department. You can email me directly if you have a tip, but we all have a responsibility to make our community safe.
We have not enough time to go into so many other things. I have a whole list of questions. I think we'll end it there. I will share one quick thing with you back to a lighter note. The interstate. I did have the chance to visit with one of your officers the other day on the side of the highway. We had a quick little interview, demonstrated how a radar gun works, explained how speed limits work. Very professional, a great interaction with this young man who, pointed out that my tags were expired. It was a really informative little interview and visit that I had with him, because I try to throw myself into my work. But it was interesting. It was an interesting moment to interact with the police officer, and he was, in that moment, an incredibly professional and good person. So anyway, thank you for being here. We'll have you back. We'll go through some of many other things. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.